If that's not enough, let us look at the economics. What's the 30%? Well, there's something, for those of you who are not from the States, there's something called value-based purchasing that the government is going to start. You're going to get benchmarked this year. And it's to award you for quality performance. 70% of the award comes from clinical indicators, 30% from your HCAHPS. Oh, by the way, they take that money from you first so that you can earn it back. All right, now we did a little math, and I just did rough math. If the average hospital earns $180 million a year and $90 million's Medicare, because that's where it's going to start, and the 2% that's going to be withheld by 2017, you're looking at least $2 million a year. But then what happens when private insurers start doing this? And then what are the charges that you have to net the money that you still have to earn back? So it gets really crazy. The clinic, Press Ganey was nice enough to share some of their value-based purchasing calculator. The clinic it will be $4.1 million in arrears to start this. Now let's turn the 30% into another way to look at the 30%. You know, a lot of times with HCAHPS we say, well, what is that? And we may tell a patient, well, it's a measure of our satisfaction. And that would be a wrong attitude to take, because quality and satisfaction, as somebody mentioned earlier, they're the baselines. That's expected. People want incredible quality and a great customer experience. And they say that 70% of people will naturally fall into an accountable care organization based on prior usage, demographics, whatever it might be. But 30% have a choice. And those 30% are the ones that you have to watch out for, because they want the absolute best. And a lot of them are those baby boomers. And we're not afraid to get in planes, trains, and automobiles to go somewhere for care. I have done work overseas. I believe in medical tourism, but I also believe in local medical tourism. And not necessarily just going to the Clevelands and the Mayos, but hopping 2 counties or 2 states over to have your hip or knee repaired because you've heard and done your research about the great experience. Let's look at another role, the Chief Experience Officer. My colleagues and I came up with this analogy. Healthcare workers are like firefighters. Experience great moments of joy, great moments of sorrow. Yet the firefighting culture is one that people clamor to get into. They're treated like heroes. Healthcare workers, maybe not as much. Maybe in some J&J commercials, I believe. What happens in the firefighting culture is that in the firehouse, people are able to grieve, they're able to celebrate, and they go home cleansed. Healthcare workers take it home. And there's been enough articles, the most recent I read was in Hospital and Health Networks, about essentially that causes, poor quality. It leads to poorer quality. If you really wanted to see this play out in an unfortunate story you might have read about, a nurse in Seattle made a medical error, wound up in the death of a child. They, of course, suspended her, then they, let her go. She committed suicide. Now, if you don't think you need a chief experience officer, I say consider this role, which is totally different than any other industry, the chief healing officer. And what does that mean? Well, it means programs like the Cleveland Clinic has, this Code Lavender, where teams mobilize to help employees. But I also think it's some basic stuff. A hospital in my own neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina, let their pastoral care people go on a cost-cutting move. I mean, these are some basic things. But I think hospitals have to heal themselves and heal their employees before they can expect to really take this to the next level. And I believe that's a role. Again, some of this is aspirational, but I think you're smart enough to figure out some of the roles that would go with that. Now, despite that, and my own personal experience, we still fall down on health care. And I blame some things like this. I actually found this on Flickr. Death and dying in long-term care facilities, operational guidelines. Did anybody know that they had operational guidelines? Which prompted, here's the best part, which prompted the person who posted this to put this. So, if you die in a long-term care facility without following the operational guidelines, do they make you die all over again correctly this time? But But the thing is, we spend more time charting than sometimes we do about the caring. Here's another thing to take into consideration. This is dating myself for sure. But if I ask you, what's that guy's job on the left? Yeah, environmental maintenance. Yep, somebody's about to say it. In the context of NASA, when people toured NASA in the 60s and said, what's your job? What did he say? That's right. Put a man on the moon. You get the nuance here. If somebody comes in the organization and somebody says, what's your job? I would imagine that right now your job is to heal people, but in the healthcare shift, it's going to be about keeping people well. But yet, when we look at patient experiences, sometimes it starts looking like this. This is an actual map of troop movements in Kabul that was shown to General McChrystal, which caused him to, shake his head and wonder, how the heck are we getting anything done? But a lot of times, this is what we do. We bring in the big guns to change the experience, map the experience, script the people, and it becomes kind of artificial at the end of the day. When simply, and with permission, we could take a lesson from my friend Barbara Glanz and her story of Johnny the Bagger. Some of you have heard it. Again, with permission. She was addressing a supermarket convention and was imploring them, please figure out ways to want your customers to come back and shop more often. Well, Johnny was a bagger in a supermarket. Johnny had Down syndrome. Johnny went home and thought long and hard about the experience of his customer and said, I'm going to start putting inspirational notes into people's shopping bags. Well, one day, the manager of the supermarket comes out, and of course, there's 50 people in Johnny's line and very few in anybody else's. Because everybody wants the note. Here's the thing with Johnny. Nobody told Johnny what